I feel a panic attack coming on when I'm on public transport. About 20 years ago, I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
And it was sort of one of those things where I think I just sort of... Stuff was going on. It wasn't great, but someone had told me about... My girlfriend at the time had them. And I almost thought I just kind of psychologically kind of willed it on. But bloody hell, was it like... I can't breathe here, or am I having a heart attack?
Well, people go to A&E.
Where's this come from?
Yeah,
it's awful.
It can be terrifying.
You must hear this all the time. You know, you're on a bus, you're on the tube, on a train, and you sort of feel a sense of panic coming on. What's going on?
Well, it's important to ask yourself that question and to think, when does that panic attack start? Because it's a response to something. It's always a response to something, be it a thought or an experience or it can actually be brought on by the fear itself. So, panic attacks, as you say, they're such a kind of holistic feeling that you feel out of control. People do take themselves to A&E because they're thinking it feel like you're having a heart attack. You can be scared that you're dying when it's in full swing. So that in itself could bring on panic attacks. And then there just becomes an association. So you said very clearly there, it's like, well, your girlfriend spoke about, trains bring on panic attacks for her. So therefore there's that clear association. So then the trains, sometimes even the thought of going on a train can bring on the panic attack. But it's important to think, what is the fear, and when is that starting? So panic attacks, whilst they can feel like they just hit us out of nowhere, it's a physiological response. It builds up. And the better we can identify where that is starting, it's like a runaway train. It's a lot easier to stop that runaway train as it's starting to run away. But the further it's got down the hill, the harder it is to halt it.
So when you say that, do you mean in a classic therapy sense, okay, this has got its roots in something, deep down I'm feeling some sort of deep anxiety, which is putting me into a kind of flight-fight response.
Yeah.
So I need to sit down with a therapist and say, this stuff's going on. What's playing in my subconscious? What's triggering my nervous system?
Yeah, I mean, there's the issue of the anxiety around the train itself, and then there is the fact that that might just be a displacement, we call it in therapy. So, for example, say you've had an argument with your partner and you're feeling really upset about that, but you haven't dealt with it, and then something falls out the cupboard and that makes you swear and cry. And is it really the thing that fell out the cupboard, or is it really to do with the argument that you haven't resolved and you haven't processed? And often anxiety, it can point to kind of something else in our life that's been going on that we haven't explored. It's a lot easier and simpler to feel anxious about a train than it is to deal with some potentially unresolved, unprocessed, and explored things. So that, it might, so therapy can be really helpful if it's something that keeps coming back and there's this anxiety, there's this kind of fear of these panic, what's actually going on.
But I guess it feels like there's the deep underlying issues to be addressed with something like CBT or whatever it is, therapy, psychotherapy. But there's the kind of there and then.
The there and then.
Like in the there and then, if you're feeling one coming on, what should you do?
What can we do? Yeah. The easy thing, and I think what we all want to do, because we want to avoid pain as much as we possibly can, and anything that's triggering fear, we want to flip and get away from it. If there's a spider, I'm out of here. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to hang around. But every time we try and remove ourselves from a situation, so say you start to feel anxious and you're like, right, I'm getting off this, stop, I'm getting out of here. What you do is you bail, as that wave is peaking. Like anxiety is like a wave. I think what we fear in that moment is that we're gonna feel like that forever. And if we keep bailing out before we reach that peak, it's gonna kind of confirm the fact that it's that trigger, it's the train that makes us feel like that. And if we can find ways to kind of ride over the peak of that wave and stay in the place that's triggering us, it will then, you'll feel empowered at the end of it. You're like, I'm still here, and I'm still here. I managed to ride that wave, and it's going to encourage you for the next time. So, that whole I can't go on trains, it gives me a panic attack, I have to get off. You've just actually proved that you've proved that wrong. So it's about finding techniques to help ride that wave of anxiety, to help suppress that nervous system response, because you're having a very physical reaction to what is probably a mental trigger, a thought somewhere.
But practically, whilst you're on that,
Yeah.
is it breathing exercises to calm you down?
Yeah.
Is it a sort of mantra you should be
repeating?
repeating?
So the breathing exercises, literally. So you want to be able to access your rational brain again, right? Because when you start panicking, we know full well that we're less able to coach ourselves. You know, the irrational brain kicks in. You feel like you're at massive threat. You just want to get out there. The grown-up rational part of you that would normally be able to coach yourself in that situation, like, it's okay. You know, like the kind parent. Like, it's okay. You've done this. You've done this before. You can do it again. Like, it's going to be all right. There's, you know, you're not in as much danger as you think. You know, finding ways to kind of to calm that nervous system response. Breathing is incredibly powerful for that.
So what sort of breathing can you do in that situation?
The important thing is that the exhale is steady and longer than the inhale, because we know when we're anxious, we do that kind of shallow breathing, and that just hypes up our system. It gets our body literally ready and raring. Even thinking about it is making me, putting me in that heightened state.
Edginess,
But you know, and using breathing exercises, just a really steady breath, and you can get apps that will help you do that. And sometimes, you know, just watching something, there are kind of different apps that will just kind of help you, give you something graphic to follow with your breath, and that kind of just switches off that nervous system response. It activates the parasympathetic, the kind of the rest and digest instead of the fight or flight. And we can do that. The breath is so powerful. It's underestimated, most powerful tool, I think, that we have for our mental health in the day-to-day.
Like my own learning, and I'm interested to know whether it's yours, is you don't let it win. So I don't know, if you have that fear of flying or being on the tube or something, you do what it takes to kind of normalise it. And the more you do it, the less then it sort of literally just falls away.
And you know that each feeds into the other. So once you start feeling it, it's just a whirlwind, isn't it? It's like a tornado. So physiologically you feel it, mentally then you're thinking more about it, then physiologically you're responding more to the thoughts, and it's just that spiral. So breathing, distraction is also really, really helpful, because you can't, like, I find counting back from 103s. You know, you can't be over catastrophically thinking whilst doing, I mean, you might be really good at doing that, but I find it quite tricky. I can't do two. I can't do both things at once. So, you know, distraction's also really helpful.
I mean, as I said, I think the good news with things like panic attacks, it feels to me like you can certainly grow out of them. You can beat them. You know, I know a number of people who've had one or a couple, and then you don't have them again because if you, some therapy as to what's going on there, some breathing in the short term, maybe beta blockers for a bit. You know, if needs be, antidepressants I think are actually more powerful against anxiety than depression in some ways. And what feels like a kind of horrific, almost kind of experience, doesn't have to define you, and you can get over it, and you can talk about it, and you completely forget that one day you're on the train and it's like, why on earth was I fussed about this?
Because you've rewritten your narrative. Practice the techniques when you don't need them. They're also really good for helping you fall asleep. You know, breathing exercises. Get so used to them that they become like an easy to grab response to overthinking, stress. You know, so that you're noticing in your body, you become a bit more attuned to when that anxiety is starting to pick up, because it's physiological. When you just become more sensitive to it, so that you can implement the techniques at an earlier point. That's, you know, just use them when you don't need them, so they're really familiar when you do.
Feeling calmer now.
Great. I need to do some. I'm still feeling quite hyped up after that anxiety chat.
I know. Right, and breathe.